travels 16 20-kilometer trips, totaling about 320 kilometers in a day. So it turns out that everything I do is pointless, and I kept waiting for that engine to end up in my chain. So the total mileage on this engine is 3 million kilometers. This one has done 5 million kilometers, and this one has done 7 million kilometers. You're pulling the wool over our eyes. Are you just trying to get attention? So most likely the block will be scrapped, scrap metal. Hello everyone, welcome to the engine channel. Today we'll be disassembling an engine. This engine right here, it's a Mercedes-Benz, it's a 447 turbocharged. This engine was taken out of a bus like this one. This is a Mercedes-Benz 405 and the engine worked with a GMP transmission. Automatic. So the flywheel was removed and put on another engine, revealing the dirt that had accumulated underneath it. The engine has been washed at the car wash and is clean in some places, revealing its color. However, there are still areas like under the pump where a layer of dirt remains. Also, you can see the amount of dirt right here where the car wash didn't reach. And also we can see the condition of the engine right here near the intake manifold. Yes, so the spray didn't reach this area. We can see how much buildup and dirt we have here. And there are layers, you could say, several centimeters thick. They don't even come off easily. So the reason I'm telling you all this, the reason for all this is, I'm leading up to this. So he's telling you all this to say that this engine we have is unique. And it's unique because from 1988 to 2021, it ran all that time without any repairs. For example, if we look at the cylinder head bolts, we'll see that they are still covered with the original factory paint. That means the heads have never been removed. The heads haven't been removed, the oil pan hasn't been taken off, so nobody has opened up the inside of the engine. So I started doing some calculations and figured out the mileage on this engine. This engine is from a bus, from our company. I've been working at our company for about 25 years, since 1997. And this bus arrived while I was already working there. That is, when I was working, it came around 2003 or 2004. The engine arrived in the early 2000s, possibly around 2005, and has never been opened since then. So I'm the only mechanic here who works on engines, and I can say with absolute certainty that I haven't worked on this engine. I estimated the engine's mileage. Our town is small, and the route in one direction is 10 kilometers. Well, approximately maybe 9.5 to 10, something like that. It turns out 10 kilometers one way and 10 kilometers the other way makes 20 kilometers in total. One trip the bus makes in 1 hour, and it starts working at 6 in the morning, and its last trip is at 22:00. That is 16 hours. That's the engine. On the route, I'll say right away there are 2 drivers working because, well, I don't know. When I start recording videos like this, there are a lot of comments saying that I'm making things up, that I'm inventing something, that it's impossible, and so on. I'll now explain in more detail, so there are no questions and everyone understands as much as possible what kind of engine this is, its mileage, and so on. The total distance from one end to the other is 20 kilometers lap, so in a day this bus makes 16 trips. One driver works in the morning, and then after a shift change around 2 or 3, the second driver takes over. That's how it is every day. When our bus is on the route, it's making money. When it's in the garage, it's costing us money. So that's 16 trips of 20 kilometers each. That means the bus covers about 20 kilometers a day. He worked on different routes during his 17-year career, including within the city at some point. Maybe for some time, a few years, or maybe a few months. At some point he worked within the city, and at other times he worked on intercity routes. Well, basically, the mileage is about the same. It's just that 2 people work within the city, or he works from 6 in the morning until 10 at night. And on intercity routes, the mileage is about 150 kilometers round trip. 2 trips are 300 kilometers. 3 trips are 450 kilometers. Sometimes buses make 2 trips, and sometimes they make 3 trips a day. So another common comment is that it's impossible to drive 450 kilometers in a day. And what do you think? The drivers are professionals, that's what they get paid for, right? What's your opinion? Yes, a professional driver gets paid for the distance, for the mileage. And I also want to ask if any professional drivers are watching me, please write in the comments how many kilometers you drive in a day and what kind of vehicle you use. Write your region, vehicle, and average daily mileage. It would be interesting to read. I think it will be interesting for me and for everyone else to read. So it turns out to be about 320 kilometers a day. Well, let's say 310, give or take. In any case, he can't work every day, there are always some breakdowns. So it comes out to about 12 days a year. He was in for repairs, that's our maintenance. Well, let's say, roughly speaking, that this engine didn't work for a month, right? So it was under repair for a month. With 1 month out, we have 335 days left at 320 kilometers per day. Multiplying that comes out to about 105,000 to 110,000. I don't remember right now, I calculated it before. Let's say, for example, that this engine ran 100,000 kilometers per year. So in 17 years, that's 1,700,000 kilometers. Regarding the mileage in Germany, I can't say for certain how the car was used there, how the engine ran, or how the vehicle performed. Based on my calculations of about 100,000 kilometers per year, the car is from 1988. It arrived in Russia around 2002 or 2003, and that's reasonable. It spent around 15 years in Germany, covering approximately 1.3 million kilometers during that time. The engine has driven a total of 3 million kilometers, with 1.7 million in Russia and 1.3 million in Germany. 3 million kilometers, that's more or less, give or take, maybe 10 or even 20%. I'm just saying this roughly, I just want to get across how reliable the equipment used to be. So, the engine is from 1988, you can see these bolts haven't been unscrewed yet, you can tell the bolts on the heads haven't been unscrewed yet. I can confidently say that in Russia it has run 1,700,000 kilometers. All this time while it was running on the route and I was working at this company, I kept waiting for this engine to end up in my workshop. So what else do I want to say? When I start filming high mileage videos, I always try to explain everything as accurately as possible. They start to write in the comments that I'm just telling stories, that I want to get hype and so on. So if I wanted to get hype and tell stories, I would have said so. Let's say this engine has run 2 or 3 million kilometers, then I would take this engine and say the same thing. This one has run 4 million kilometers, this one has run 5 million kilometers, and this one has run 7 million kilometers. I could do that. I have these engines lying in the workshop. There are more there. Engines. I want to show a truly unique case. I don't want to chase hype. I don't want to deceive anyone or anything like that. I just want to show a unique case. So there's also another common comment on this topic. When they show high mileage engines like the GAZ 53 engine I showed with 1 million kilometers on it, here it is on the shelf. And then it started, yeah, that's impossible. You're making it up. The driver was draining the gas. That's why it has such mileage. So let me explain for those who don't understand. I'll explain briefly for people who write that the driver faked the mileage. Tell me, how can you fake the mileage on a bus when there's point A and point B and the distance between these points is known? It's not like the vehicle is just driving around here and there. The driver goes somewhere, adds 100 kilometers for himself, and so on. I want to clarify that I'm not deceiving anyone, though I can make mistakes. The odometer might not read exactly 3 million kilometers. It could be around 2 million from Germany and another 1,700,000 here, totaling approximately 4 million kilometers, give or take 20%. Now, what's the fate of this engine? This engine was removed from the bus and replaced with another engine. There was a decommissioned bus, and it had an engine that had been overhauled. The engine was removed, brought to my workshop, and installed. The other engine was put on the bus, which then left. It's working. It's been a few months, maybe almost half a year, I don't know. This engine was sitting in my workshop. I kept wanting to find and set aside time to record this very video about such high mileage. So what's the future of this engine? For now, I'm just taking it apart to check its condition, to inspect for defects, see the state of the crankshaft, the block, and so on. Ultimately, conclusions will be drawn after the disassembly. That's when the fate will be decided. It will either be assembled as a refurbished engine, sold as one, or remain as spare parts, etc. So its further fate is still unknown. So that's what I'm going to do now, but before I start disassembling it, what I want to do is start it up. And I tell myself I'm doing this exclusively for the video, just to show how it will work. Well, basically, I'm also curious myself to see how it will run, whether the pressure will be stable or unstable, the smoke, and so on. and so on. So I've connected the pressure gauge. Now I'll add more oil. We don't have any here, but when I drain it, it will be black. I'm pouring it in now. Fresh oil. So I also need to install the flywheel. I've already prepared the flywheel over there. We'll have a flywheel. Well, it's not the same as the one that was here before. It's not the original. This one is for the clutch basket, and the one that was here was for the torque converter. They're a bit different. Now I'll install the flywheel. While the engine was on the hoist, I already connected the starter. Here are the wires already. I set it up on the board more or less, so it stands straight. I installed a new plug here. It seems the previous one was torn off or missing. Now I'm going to supply diesel here, and I also need to somehow plug this hole. Yes, we have pressure supply here, oil. So I won't pour in any water. I'll start it up for just 2 or 3 minutes. Nothing will happen to it in that time. 2 or 3 minutes isn't critical. Now I'm getting everything ready, starting it up. We'll see how it runs, and then we'll start taking it apart. So that, as you can see, the batteries are already low. They're not spinning well, so I don't know if we'll be able to do anything at all. Alright, now I'm connecting the diesel and we'll try to start it. But I'll be starting the engine without the turbo, as there isn't one. There will be smoke, but the turbo doesn't function at idle anyway. Alright, it seems like I've connected everything. The fuel goes from the tank to the manual pump, from the manual pump to the low pressure pump, and from there to the high pressure pump. This is already the return line, the return. For now, I'm pumping it into a bottle, just checking what kind of diesel is coming out, and then I'll send everything to the main tank. Let's start pumping. So, well, we can see that at first a bit of cloudy diesel came out. Maybe there was some dirt in some of the pipes or somewhere else. The liquid is clean now, so I'm pouring it back into the tank. I've finished the preparations and pumped as much as possible. Now I'll attempt to start it. So since my batteries are weak, I'll use a quick start. Yeah, now I'll spray a little into the manifold so it catches faster, gets pumped, and so on. I fear that all my hard work might be for nothing if my batteries die, rendering everything I'm doing potentially futile. Alright, I'll try with a quick start. So we can see that the engine basically caught on. It wanted to start. I just let off the gas. Why? The return line popped off, causing diesel to spray everywhere. Well, onto the floor basically. And we can see oil started flying. Here are the oil splatters. So I wanted to start it without the compressor. I plugged the oil channel here, but oil still collects under the gear and it just splashes it around. Starting it here will cover the workshop in oil. That's why I installed the compressor this way. Without the cylinder head, it basically doesn't bother us that it's missing. There's no coolant here and oil isn't supplied here. Alright, so I'll start it again now. We can see some steam coming out here, but that's just water evaporating. Here I have the cylinder liner. You can see it and I can easily hold it with my hand. It's not even warm, it's still cold. So basically we can see that the engine starts and even runs somehow. When priming the diesel fuel, I turned the crankshaft and could only feel compression in 1 or 2 cylinders. In all the others it just spins freely without any resistance. I don't think I mentioned the reason for removing it. I said it had high mileage and had never been serviced, but I didn't explain why it was removed. I mean, well, it's clear that there's already wear everywhere. There's wear in the crank mechanism, wear in the cylinder piston group, and so on. It vents crankcase gases, throws and consumes oil, smokes, and has poor power. So did we get the whole set, the whole bouquet of a worn-out engine? Now what else do I want to show? We can see that oil has leaked into the cylinder in the compressor. This means there's wear on the oil control rings, and you can clearly see how oil gets into the cylinder. Then it goes into the air system, gets coked up, and so on. What really surprised me was the oil pressure, which was 6 atmospheres or 6 bars. The induction valve activates. Well, maybe it's because the engine is still cold, maybe it's because it's cold, or maybe because I put in fresh oil. By the way, it's mineral oil, it's very viscous, maybe that's why the pressure went up too. Well, the pressure really surprised me. Well, basically, what else can I say? Basically, I showed how an engine with 3 million works. So, it doesn't have idle speed, which means you have to keep pressing the gas all the time. At idle, it starts shaking and stalls. Well, that's it. Now I'm disconnecting the batteries, first draining the oil and starting to take it apart. This is a personal announcement from me, not a paid ad. I've already shared my reasons for doing this. So now I'll insert a few receipts showing what I bought on Ozone. That's it, so that's the announcement. Now let's get started on taking apart the engine. The bolts, completely covered in carbon buildup and oily deposits, have never been removed. The impact wrench can barely unscrew them. Maybe the gasket was leaking, which caused these deposits, maybe even burnt oil and so on. Some of the bolts are completely clean, like this one, which looks brand new. I removed the cylinder heads, and we can see that in this area the gaskets have completely rotted away. So it's clear that both water was getting in and some oil was leaking from above, and diesel fuel was also seeping in here. Then it would heat up, coke up, and so on. Everything just turned into dust. This is what they look like. 33 years of continuous operation. What happens to the gaskets? We discovered that our gaskets have rotted completely, particularly along the heads. It's hard to say right now because they're all covered in dirt, carbon deposits, oil, and so on. So all of this needs to be washed, cleaned, removed. The valves need to be disassembled, checked, and so on. The sludge straps are fully clogged. In some spots you can poke through slightly, but in others even a knife can't penetrate. So if you look at the sleeves, the wear is definitely significant. There's about 0.5 millimeter for sure. But if you look at the cylinder itself, you can see it's like a perfect mirror. There is some wear, but the mirror finish is just perfect. No scratches, no scuffs, nothing. So for its year of production, the piston is in almost perfect condition, you could say. Same goes for the bearings. I thought it would be much worse. Here we can see the bearing that's in the connecting rod. There's a bit more wear here. Yes, there is some wear. You can see a terrible layer. So the bearing also says 92. What can I say about this engine? So the first thing I want to say is, as you can see, the release date was adjusted. I thought it was made in 1988, but it was actually made in 1992. I'll try to find the bus's manufacturing year from the documents. If I find it, I'll add it to the subtitles. Even though the year of manufacture was corrected, I still think that this engine's mileage is close to 3 million kilometers. So this is the overall condition of the engine for its age and mileage. Well, it's just excellent, right? So the main bearings are in this condition. The pistons are actually in perfect condition for this mileage. The crankshaft is also in perfect condition. The camshaft should not have any problems either. Although, of course, some of the cam lobes are a bit lower, yeah, you can see it visually, but I'll measure everything. Naturally, the sleeves need to be replaced, that's obvious. There's just so much wear here, it's huge. Usually, I get engine repairs where there's usually some kind of reason. Typically, the reason is dust in the air intake, coolant oil, or something similar. There's always some kind of explanation. The engine required repairs due to its age. So, about the block, all our gaskets were rotten as I showed you, and I cleaned up a bit here. You can even see here that the guide bolts are the same, all corroded. They barely came out. They were stuck in there. Well, they were really stuck. There's dirt, oil, carbon buildup, and basically everything together. I barely managed to get them out. Got them out, we can see. The guide is all corroded, and the block itself has the same corrosion, especially this bridge between the sleeves. I'll clean this up and take a closer look, but you can already see the pits here. That's why I think this block is Well, at the very least, it will need to be restored, but most likely it will just be scrapped for metal because there's no point in restoring it. It's a lot of work, requiring machining the seating multiple times, working on the pistons and more. The block will likely be scrapped for metal. I also want to show you the wear on the geyser. I take this kind of bore gauge and set it to 128 millimeters. Here I have a micrometer clamped in a vise. I've set it to 128 millimeters. It goes to 0 and back. So, 0 for me is 128 millimeters, like this. Now I release it into the sleeve. We measure the sleeve at the very top where the rings are stationary. Here it shouldn't be exactly 128 millimeters. It's 128 and some hundredths. And we see it's 128.4, 128.4. Now I measure in the middle. Yes, somewhere in the middle. So we see here it's 128.5, 128, 5, 6, something like that. And now I measure in the place with the most wear. Well, that's where the top dead center is, where the top compression ring passes the top dead center. So do you see how much wear there is here? Almost 3/10. So here the size is 128.3. Well, it's a bit more in some places, a bit less in others. I've already measured everything. It's about 3/10. Well, obviously we can't install sleeves like these anymore. These sleeves are already going to be thrown away. So what do we have in the end? I won't be assembling this engine. So maybe something will be done in the future, but at the moment I won't be assembling it yet. The sleeves will be scrapped and the block's fate is undecided. Question: the crankshaft. Camshaft, pistons, cylinder heads and other parts are in good working condition and will remain with us. I'm not sure what else to say. Well, as usual, I'll say that it's very important to like the video, leave a comment under this video. In other words, show some activity. YouTube algorithms really like that, as I've said many times before. It helps promote the video. On that note, I'll end this video. That concludes our video featuring an engine with 3 million miles. Thank you all for watching and good luck. Goodbye. I positioned the block horizontally, removed the guides, and cleaned off the heavy carbon buildup, rust, scale, and other deposits.
All sorts of things. So
In those places where we had corrosion on the gasket, where the gaskets were eaten away, the block was also eaten away there. This part of the block is in good condition, and right here, these are traces of corrosion. So we can see how deep it is. In addition to the damaged cylinder head mating surface, the seat for the liner is also damaged, with a visible recess present. Well, in general, you can see that the sidewall is corroded, and the area where the ring sits is also completely corroded. Moreover, where the rubber sealing ring sits on the liner, you can see it's all eaten away as well. So it should look something like this. Here, it looks like this.
like this. So
Well, okay, this is kind of corrosion. You can still grind it down. Yeah, you can machine it here, you can cover it with something here, and so on. There's another thing we have that we can't do anything about anymore. That is, there's a crack running along the bridge between the bolt where you screw it in and the seat for the sleeves. So here it goes, and you can clearly see it, and it also goes along this spot and then goes off. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it goes off here and then it leads into the water jacket. There's nothing we can do about this anymore. It's pointless to try repairing or welding anything. So this block is definitely going to scrap metal now.